Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, where today we are picking out the perfect replacement for your club's ageing superstar. Here are our thoughts on who should replace Bruno Fernandes at Man United.
Just turned 24, huge Manchester United fan, grew up with David Beckham as one of his favourite players, Cristiano Ronaldo as one of his favourite players. I think that he would be a really good option.
Who is the ideal KDB heir? But I think if Man City offered £80 million for Pedri, I think they'd have to come to the table and consider it. And can anyone replace Van Dijk?
He is just the perfect all-round central defender. I just don't see a hole in his game.
Yes, welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody. And he's back, guys, after quite a few weeks away. Joe Tomlinson back in a Lowdown chair. How are we doing, Joe?
Yeah, good to be back, mate. Apologies for not being here. I've been on the road doing bits and bobs, but it's beautiful to be back in the chair.
Chatting to Wazza.
Yeah, chatting to Wayne most recently. Yeah, what a lovely gentleman. Also chatting to Antonio Riola. Absolute pleasure to speak to him. Honestly, what an insightful and interesting man he is. That'll be coming out soon.
Yeah, we've got loads of good stuff all across Sky Premier League in the next few weeks. Look out for that. Today, though, guys, we're trying to find the dream replacement for your club's superstar. So we've picked a number of teams, actually, up and down the league, and we will be talking about the perfect fit in terms of a replacement for them long term. We're basically focusing on players over the age of 30. We're going to kick off with Bruno Fernandes, McCubs. But I should explain that Mikey is also going to play the role of sporting director, so he has ultimate say on our picks. And what are you sort of looking for a Bruno replacement?
Yeah, so Bruno Fernandes, of course, has been United's talisman over the last 4.5 years now. He turned 30 last month. He's got 250 appearances, or almost 250 appearances to his name. His main attribute, of course, throughout his time at United has been his chance creation, goal scorer as well, 54 goals and 42 assists in 166 Premier League appearances. So all round, contributor in the final third. His passing has always been superb in terms of getting the ball upfield. But I would say, Bruno has had a lot of work to do at United over the years. I'm not necessarily looking for a midfielder who has to take on all of that responsibility. I want a top-class number 10 creator. Obviously, Fernandes' output has dropped off as well this season as well. So it does feel like maybe if this form were to carry on, that Man United would perhaps have to go into the market earlier for a replacement than they would like to. So someone who really can step into this United team pretty instantaneously. I know they've got Mason Mount on the books, but his injury record is patchy at best since arriving. Patchy in his final season at Chelsea as well. So I think United could be in trouble if Bruno's form were to continue as it currently is and Mount isn't able to keep up fitness-wise. So I do think United need someone who can come into this team right now and perform.
Okay, Joe, so we've heard the brief. Do you want to kick off with your pitch?
First and foremost, I don't think Bruno needs replacing. I understand some of the other names on this list, but I think with Bruno's contractual situation, signed a brand new 4-year contract in the summer, taking him all the way through to 2028, captain of the club, and yes, he's having a little down spell. I would be reticent to replace him, but I understand where we're going here.
It's more
You've
like
spoken
long-term,
about Mason Mount, haven't you?
long-term replacement.
I also want to see Shea Lacey given a bit of a chance. Obviously, highly rated in the academy. I don't know whether United need. I know you're the sporting director, Mikey. I know this. But I don't know whether United
already tension.
Sorry, there is tension. Today. Yeah, there is. Because I'm going to say that I don't know whether United need an instant impact there. I think United have tried that in the past, tried signing players that are sort of 28 years old, coming in and having impacts, and it hasn't always worked. I'd like to see United sign a slightly younger player, maybe not an 18-year-old, but somebody that's got a bit of Premier League experience, first and foremost. That would excite me. I'm going to suggest Morgan Gibbs-White.
Okay.
I think he's had a fantastic start to the season at Nottingham Forest, building on the back of an excellent end of the campaign last year, proven that he can play in that number 10 position, not only for Nottingham Forest to an extremely high level, but also for the England youth team. We saw him great success used in and around that area for the 21s, and I think he can translate those numbers of creativity and improve them at Manchester United. He's putting up 4.5 shot creating actions per 90, so a little bit below Bruno Fernandes, but he's still just 24 years old, and it is harder to create chances in a Nottingham Forest side that don't see loads of the ball, that aren't going to go out there and dominate sides. I think not only is his on-the-ball ability very strong, when you watch him, some of his underlying numbers aren't as good as some other players that I think could have been suggested here. But when I watch Morgan Gibbs-White, there's something about the eye test when I watch him. I think he is a really special player. The way he moves with the ball, the way he has an ability to kill it dead instantly, beat a couple of players. I also think his off-the-ball work has really improved under Nuno. I don't think it's spoken about enough that he plays almost as part of a midfield three at times, alongside players like Elliot Anderson, Ryan Yates. Very much Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga are classical wingers. He offers a lot of stability in that 10 role, I think, Morgan Gibbs-White. There's loads to come from him. Just turned 24. Huge Manchester United fan. Grew up with David Beckham as one of his favourite players. Cristiano Ronaldo as one of his favourite players. I think that he would be a really good option, an obtainable option for Manchester United for slightly less than some of the fees that are going to be spoken about. And FFP has to come into this.
Yeah, you make a good point there. The spiritual argument as well, him being a Man United fan. Dougie, who have you gone for?
Well, I actually had Morgan Gibbs-White down as one of my backups, and I also considered Enzo Milo, who's getting a lot of praise for his work at Stuttgart. He's now France under-21 captain as well. But I've gone for someone slightly older, but with that instant Premier League impact as well. He knows the league well. He's now in his 5th season there, and that's Eberechi Eze at Crystal Palace. I think he's a really, really nice fit, to be totally honest. He's got this reputation for being injury prone, but actually it was only in his 2nd year where he has picked up consistent injuries. Every other year he's made over 30 appearances in all competitions for Crystal Palace, and his output is getting better and better all the time. This season, without Michael Olise, with a lot of those new signings not having hit the ground running in Daichi Kamada, etc., who was expecting big things from, he's taken on so much of the attacking mantle as well. I think only Haaland and Semenyo have fired off more shots in the Premier League so far this season. Bruno Fernandes, notorious for amazing chance creation and firing off great shots as well. But he's at 3 shot creating actions per 90 this season, that is. Eze's at over 5 and is having just a brilliant time of it. And yes, he hasn't had maybe the goals and assists to back it up, but I think it's only a matter of time with the way that he's operating at the moment. And he's an England international. He's got 9 caps now for England. It feels like he's on the verge of a breakthrough there, despite massive competition in that area with Bellingham and Foden and Palmer, etc. But I think Man United is the next step for him. And I was quite surprised with those comments made by Steve Parish a few weeks ago, where he said he was surprised by the lack of interest in Eze in the summer from the top clubs. And I actually thought it was a high likelihood he was going to leave in the summer, but there was not that much interest. So it feels like a Man City, an Arsenal, a Liverpool aren't necessarily going to go for him. And if Man United come to the table, I think it'd be really, really tempted. It's obviously a huge club. You get the factor of being one of the guys that's trying to save it. And while they try and work through Xerxes and Højlund and adapt these players to the Premier League and Garnacho matures, Eze comes in and hits the ground running, I think. I struggle to see him taking a massive dip on joining Man United. Yes, the pressure's higher, but he's definitely got the ability. So I think he's my guy.
One thing I would say, Joe brings it up, FFP. Not that I think Gibbs-White would be very cheap, but Eze is 2 years older than Gibbs-White, for example. How much do you think we're talking here in terms of a transfer fee? It feels like it's going to take a lot to get Eze out.
Does have another release clause, doesn't it?
I think there was a release clause, definitely in the case of Elise. I'm not sure whether there is one with Eze. I
think there is. I think there is, yeah.
Hopefully then, if that's around a similar sort of price to Elise, I think you could maybe get him for around £60 million or so. And look, he'll be 27, but Man United's squad is now so young in most positions, really. Except for Agate and Rashford amongst their starting lineup. If you're replacing Bruno, there's not that much experience in this squad, really, or at least there's not that much age in this squad. So I think they can take the chance on a 27-year-old. I mean, Bruno wasn't that much younger when he joined Man United, and the fact that he could hit the ground running, he's probably been Man United's best signing the last 10 years. I mean, there's not a lot of competition, but I back Eze to make an instant impact as well.
Both great suggestions there. Eze and Gibbs-White were both on my shortlist of 3 going into this process. Dejan Kulusevski was actually on my shortlist as well.
How are we getting him out of top there? When we finished 13th and they finished 4th.
Well, this is a long-term plan, right? This is a long-term plan. And Dejan Kulusevski isn't necessarily guaranteed minutes at Spurs across a full campaign, has excelled in the centre as well. I think he's still a very feasible option for Man United. Yes, getting him off a direct rival would be very difficult. I think both great shouts. I really like the Gibbs-White shout. I think he's pretty underrated. And I think, yeah, you're right, Joe. I think his the technical ability that he's clearly had since a really young age. This is a guy who's been spoken about a lot since he was a teenager. Almost had more hype around him at a younger age than someone like Eze did when he was the same age. I think that he is cut out for, I think, eventually playing for a Champions League club. But I just think Eze's got that. He's got that wow factor now, and I think he is someone who can come into that United side and take that attack to another level. I think he offers something different from Bruno as well in terms of his dribbling ability, in terms of his ability to play, on the left, pull out wide on the left if needs be as well. Yeah, I really, really like Eberechi Eze. I think United will be very lucky to get him. So just about edges it. 1-0 to
1-0 Dukes, and I'm not happy.
Let's come to you, Joe, for the next one.
Okay.
We're going to go to Man City now.
Okay.
No surprises for guessing who we're replacing here. KDB, 34 next year. He will obviously leave a Premier League legend. I think there's an argument that he's, is he the greatest creative midfielder of the 21st century?
You
Kevin
could
De
argue
Bruyne,
greatest midfielder.
Greatest midfielder. I mean, he's certainly one of the greatest
In Premier League
midfielders
history, at least.
of all time in general, I think. I mean, he's never dropped below 3 chances a match since arriving at Man City in 2015, which is pretty astounding. Obviously, all the trophies. The question mark, of course, is that Phil Foden plays a lot of his best football in the centre. Is he effectively the De Bruyne replacement already in that attacking role? However, City's midfield in general is old. Matheus Nunes is their only midfielder aside from James McAtee and Phil Foden, who's under the age of 28 and he's 26. So we've got Bernardo into his 30s now. Gundogan back at the club, 33. Kovacic is in his 30s now as well. De Bruyne 34 next year. So City at the very least need depth there. And also what you're going to be missing with KDB is the most complete midfielder of his generation. So I think we are looking for a superstar here at City. Pep Guardiola, of course, maybe leave the club next year as well. Obviously, reports this week that Ruben Amorim could follow Hugo Viana to the club, which is pretty interesting too. So yeah, looking for again someone who can come in and really make a difference make a difference instantly. But because it's Man City, I think you can probably cast the net even higher than what we would for a Bruno replacement at Man United.
Definitely.
So Joe, what
no
are we
doubt
thinking?
about that. I think the budget is effectively infinite
huge.
here, isn't it? The sales in recent years have made that a possibility in terms of PSR. And I think the obvious answer here is Jamal Musiala. I just don't see a comparative player on the market. We can talk about Florian Wirtz all we want. I don't see Florian Wirtz leaving Germany this early. I think the difference with Musiala is...
But what about Musiala? I mean, he's at Bayern Munich. He's at
I think the difference with Jamal Musiala is that he's got a heritage and a background of growing up in England, speaks English, has worked and lived here for a large part of his life, whereas Florian Wirtz hasn't yet. I think Jamal Musiala has achieved plenty at Bayern as well and has a contractual situation that hasn't been solved yet, which also plays a big role. Florian Wirtz, I think Bayern Munich might well be eyeing him up. It is the sort of Musiala replacement. Should Jamal Musiala end up leaving, his contract's up in 2 years' time. That's a massive problem for what is clearly one of the most talented young players in world football. Whether or not Manchester City can convince him without Pep Guardiola remains to be seen, because I think every top club, including Real Madrid, is going to be very interested in Jamal Musiala. But it feels like Man City is maybe the most natural home for his footballing style. We look at Real Madrid, quite chocker in that position, in that 10 role, with Jude Bellingham wanting to play there. Arda Güler can play there as well. A lot of the other Premier League sides probably couldn't afford him or his wages, whereas Manchester City can and have a project that can convince any player to join them, in my opinion. And we're talking about one of the best creators in Europe, one of the best dribblers in Europe, excellent off the ball work. Still, what is he, 21, I believe, at current? I don't see a downside to this move. If Man City can convince Jamal Musiala to be the replacement for Kevin De Bruyne, it's perfect, because not only does he operate in a similar area to KDB, yes, he doesn't quite have the sort of defensive nous, but he can also cover, if Bernardo Silva was to pick up an injury, he can float in and around that sort of role. Ilkay Gundogan has been deployed in the 10. He can play in that sort of role. I can see him dovetailing with Phil Foden absolutely beautifully. To be honest with you, a left foot, right foot sort of 2 number 10s floating in and around behind Erling Haaland. The creativity's off the scale. The age is off the scale. The contractual situation helps them. And I think you could convince him to join the Premier League, to return to England, where, of course, he spent some of his formative years.
Very good pitch, that. Very, very good pitch. It's going to take some beating, that, Dukes.
Okay.
I mean, I'm assuming you've gone for another German player here, or have you?
No, I considered
Really?
Florian Wirtz. I really did.
Wow.
But then I thought, is he stylistically too similar to Phil Foden, to Oscar Bob, to James McAtee? And I thought, as you said, with Kovacic, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva in their 30s as well, I kind of wanted someone that can play a little bit deeper. So it is actually going to be quite interesting because my player is more of an 8 than a 10, unlike Joe's, although Jamal Musiala has been used by company a lot deeper this season. I've got a bit of a bomber. I think Man City should try and sign Pedri. And I think it is possible. Look, the downside...
When's Pedri's contract up?
The clear downside with Pedri is that he's had consistent injury issues. And that is the big one. Ever since that breakout year where he played, 70 games in that 2021 season for club and country, his body has really struggled. Over the last 3 seasons, 25, 19, and the season before that, 41 games missed with injury. But Barcelona have really been bailed out by La Masia in the last few years as well. You know, Jamal coming through, Gavi, Firmino, Kubasi, etc. And that has helped them ease the financial issues. But I think if Man City offered £80 million for Pedri, I think they'd have to come to the table and consider it.
2026 his contract's up, same year as Jamal Musiala.
Only 2 years.
Wow.
Only 2 years. And unlike with Jamal, Gavi, Kubasi, Pedri's not a La Masia graduate. He was signed from Las Palmas in 2020 and went straight into the first team. He doesn't have... You know, I'm sure he's loving playing for Barcelona.
He's an honorary Catalan at this stage.
He's an honorary Catalan, but he's
adore him.
they absolutely do. But he probably doesn't have the same emotional pull as if you try and sign a Jamal. I mean, Jamal wouldn't be a good replacement for De Bruyne, but you get my point. So I think Pedri's more achievable and actually has a game that I think would cover for a lot of those issues going forward with Man City's ageing midfield. You know, this isn't just an amazing progressive passer, even though he only completes 1 fewer than De Bruyne per 90. He also chips in defensively. 3 tackles and interceptions per 90. That's better than De Bruyne right now. And he's a great tempo controller. He understands Pep Guardiola's system, which might not be a long-term thing, but it will help ease the transition if they want to stick with this style of play. And I think Barcelona would be tempted by an £80 million plus offer for Pedri. So you've got a big decision to make, Mikey.
Interesting. That was a bit of a curveball, I can't lie. I did not think that Pedri was going to be coming into this conversation.
We're in the Barca T as well.
So already,
That's a down vote.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. This I think that was a great pitch as well, Dukes. And I do get it. Like I do think in the long term, City do need someone who can play deeper. However, I do think Musiala has shown even before Kompany arrived that he can operate in those deep areas as well. To be honest, it's more the fitness record. Musiala has a better one.
Fair enough.
I think he's performed a bigger role for his club over the last 18 months, I think, than Pedri has overall. I think Musiala, as you said, grew up in England too. I think he's physically more suited to the Premier League as well. I just see it being an easier fit with Musiala. I think Pedri would be.
Sorry, I was up against it.
Yeah, you were. I would have been. I think Wirtz would have been a tougher gig actually there. His decision making at such a young age is so good. You can say the same about Musiala and Pedri, but yeah, Musiala wins it. So 1-1.
Okay.
On to Spurs now. I think this is where things could get interesting because I'm not sure how many options there are out there for Heung-Min Son. Of course, 33 next summer. Spurs desperately need to replace this guy. Of course, got in Odegaard this summer, got in Brennan Johnson in January. So they're a lot better stocked in the forward line than before. But both of those players are still fairly raw. Brennan Johnson on a great streak at the moment, but I wouldn't back that to carry on across the whole season. And Dominic Solanke's still finding his feet as well, Dukes. I think we need a proven goal scorer in that Spurs forward line, or at least someone who has the ability to contribute 10, 15 goals a season, because at the moment, there's no guarantee of that in the forward line, I would say. Aside from Solanke's obviously only had 1 double-figure season in the Premier League so far. So who are you going with, Dukes? You had a little bit of a grimace there. Have you gone for a different profile?
I'm actually going to change my pitch on the hoof, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You changing player?
I'm changing player.
You don't,
right
I mean,
now.
you don't
No,
have
no,
to. I mean,
let-
you could convince me otherwise. You
I
could
know
convince
what
me
it
that
is.
he's someone
I've
else.
heard the pitch. It's just not going to
Yeah.
win. I'm a competitive guy.
Okay.
It's 1-1.
Who was your original name?
My original name was a real wild card. It was
Okay.
Chidera Ojuke, who plays
Okay.
for Sevilla, who is an absolute dribble monster. He's completed the most dribbles in Europe so far this season, second most progressive carries behind Vinicius Jr., but he's only 5-6 games into playing in a top 5 league. You know, he was at Royal Antwerp last year, had that amazing game against Barcelona. They beat them 3-2 Royal Antwerp. He completed 9 dribbles on the night. He was pretty much man of the match. I just don't feel like from that pitch that you're gonna
So you bottled it.
go for it. No,
I think
Selected.
it would have been a tough pitch. It would have been a tough pitch. That I think he has a ton of potential clearly, but in some ways, what I'm looking for is Heung-Min Son out of Bayer Leverkusen. I'm kind of looking for someone who's at the stage that Heung-Min Son was at when Tottenham signed him. What, 10 years ago nearly, was it now?
Okay, well, I think if you look at Spurs' squad, I think they are pretty complete with a certain level of player all over the park. You might look at centre-back depth, you might look at full-back depth and think maybe they don't have a superstar backup there. But I do think what they need now is a kind of world-class operator to elevate the levels. And I thought about Kaira Matoma yesterday. I think injuries, I think that is an exciting potential signing. But I'm actually going to throw a little bit of a wild card in there and suggest that they have a go at Khvicha Kvaratskhelia out of Napoli.
Oh, walk out.
Wow.
What are we talking about here?
Wow.
I just don't know where I don't know where his next move comes from.
Dude.
I don't know where his next move comes from. He's not going to go to Real Madrid. Barcelona can't afford him. Bayern Munich now have an abundance of wingers of a similar standard, if not maybe slightly worse than Khvicha. But Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, is he going to want to stay in Italy and join Inter Milan? They don't really play the system that gets enough out of him. Is he going to go to a Liverpool and replace Luis Diaz? No. Chelsea have an abundance of wingers. I think Spurs, and look, it will cost a lot of money. I think it would cost £80 million plus. Yep. But this guy
100%.
is exceptional. Even last year, in a down year for Napoli, they obviously finished 10th. His numbers were exceptional the year before that. Without Khvicha arriving literally off, the back farms of Georgia and just absolutely smashing it in his first year. They don't win that first Serie A title in 33 years. He is a signing to get Spurs fans excited and to elevate that Spurs squad, because I do think there are a number of very good players in that team, but they may be missing a world-class superstar, and Khvicha has the potential to be that.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Big
punchy
pitch.
target, but I'm not.
We're
definitely not ruling it out. If there's money there to be spent, then it's not the worst use of resources. Joe, who have you gone for? Have you gone for more
there was
potential?
two different routes I was thinking of going down here. Obviously, we know Mikey Moore's got a big ceiling. I think Mikey Moore's going to have a big impact on that left wing this season, and I expect by the end of the campaign, he might well have overtaken Timo Werner as being the sort of guy to go to if Son's not available. I was really tempted by Tyler Dibbling at Southampton. I think he's got a massively high ceiling and very, very impressive numbers at the start of the campaign for a player his age. I was also tempted by Jamie Bino-Gittens, or Gittens now, isn't it? I think he looks really strong. But I think they need slightly more ready-made to come into that role. And there were three names that popped out to me. The first was Harvey Barnes, who I think doesn't necessarily have a guaranteed starting spot in that Newcastle side. I think he wants to play the same role as Anthony Gordon, and Anthony Gordon feels a little bit more like the golden goose there at Newcastle, but I think Harvey Barnes is a sensational player. His goal-scoring output has always been unbelievable when he's been fit. I know he had a season out last year with injury, but that hasn't classically been the case. When he's been fit, we've seen 15-goal seasons from him at Leicester. Very Son-like with his finishing ability. When he gets in and around the box, it does really remind me of Son. Top corner, side netting, he's deadly in those situations. So I was very, very tempted by him. I'm torn, to be honest with you, between Barnes, who I think might be available as well. We've seen Newcastle's FFP issues. And also Bryan Mbeumo, who I really think is ready to step up to a Champions League level side. I think his goal-scoring output over the last 2 seasons has got 9 goals. He's got 6 in 7 at the start of this campaign. I fully expect him to blitz through his record, hit double figures, maybe get up towards the 15-goal mark. He's able to play, as you said at the start, Mikey, in a front two. He can play on the left. He can play on the right. I think
He's
part of
more
Tottenham's
generally used on the right.
I think part of Tottenham's versatility this season, part of Tottenham's signings this season, this summer and the summer before, have been that they are very versatile.
This would be my one concern if we were to bring in Bryan Mbeumo, what does that do for Brennan Johnson's development?
I think Bryan Mbeumo could play on the left. I don't see any problem with that. I think he's more than versatile enough to play on the left as an inverting winger who likes to cut in and shoot. I think he's deadly inside the box, and I just think
if he's playing on the left, he'll
ready-made.
probably more likely, being left-footed, he'll probably more naturally go out wide.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a bad thing either. How do Tottenham classically score their goals under Ange Postecoglou? They get players to the byline, cut the ball back to either the striker in Dominic Calhoun's case, or whip it across the 6-yard box to the other winger, Brennan Johnson, arriving at the back post. I think Mbeumo would be great at that. I also think he's very tactically flexible. You know, as we've seen Thomas Frank play a number of different systems, he works extremely hard off the ball. We know how well they press, how well they can defend. He's played in a 2, he's played in a 3 up there. He, for me, is just the most ready-made option of the sort of mid-table sides to step up to a Champions League club and be an instant impact in that forward line. Not including like an Eze, who I'm counting as more of a midfielder, but as a forward, his game's so well around. I think he could play for like Liverpool. I think he's that good. I think Tottenham, it would be like signing Maddison, where they just go and say, okay, here's the money, we want the player. So for me, it's between him and Barnes. I do think Barnes is amazing, but I'm going to come down the side of Mbeumo.
Really?
Interesting.
I think Mbeumo often, for me, feels like more like a Salah replacement than a Son replacement. I just don't like the fact that he's rarely been used on the left, in my opinion. But Mike, you got
that was my concern as well. Is the fact that he's very rarely been used on the left at Brentford, and that was my concern when looking at him earlier, because he was actually my pick as well. So Bryan Mbeumo does take it. I think Dukes, you would have been either
on
player
the hoof,
that it was a difficult one there. Dukes, still all to play for. We're going on to Liverpool now. It was a choice between Salah and Van Dijk. I've decided with Van Dijk as the player that he's replacing. I think that's the more desperate one. I think Liverpool, Van Dijk could go on until 37, 38. He's in amazing form right now, but centre-back is not where Liverpool have been putting many resources recently. The forward line has been, absolutely stacked with signings for the last few windows, and so it feels like even if Salah were to leave, there's enough there for Slot to work with. I think at centre-back, if Van Dijk was to leave, and of course his contract is still up next year, that Liverpool would be scrambling a lot more, especially given his performances so far this season and his performances for the majority of last season. He is still, for me, in the top 2 centre-backs in world football. Ideally, a top-class, if not world-class, ball-playing centre-back who can partner Ibrahima Konate, who I think Konate's got enough to be able to fulfill the kind of far-fighting side of Van Dijk's game. We've already seen it. Obviously, amazing physical presence in both boxes as well. So I don't think Liverpool are going to necessarily miss out on Van Dijk's aerial threat in that sense. What I'm more focused on is the ball-playing part, because Van Dijk remains one of the best ball-playing centre-backs in world football and someone who can play on the left as well. So that's more what I'm looking for. But obviously, as with anything, I can be persuaded by a good pitch. So, Joe, I'm going to come to you.
Okay, I agree with you. I think the ball playing element is quite key here. But I also think they need a good defender in there, somebody who's got a bit of experience but isn't too old. So the player I'm going to pitch is a 2-time Serie A winner, a Euros winner, Europa League runner-up, 2-time Serie A Team of the Year, Serie A Defender of the Year last campaign. It's Bastoni. 25 years old, obviously has operated majority of his career in a 3, but I don't think that's a massive downside, to be honest with you, because that's allowed him to improve on the ball so much. We are talking about one of the finest centre-backs in world football in terms of on-the-ball ability. His pressure, when he plays in that advanced position, he's almost playing as a midfielder, really, at times, and to be able to do that with his frame, with his physicality, with his defensive ability, with his nous is remarkable. And I think working with Simone Inzaghi for this length of time has really, really developed his game. Let's not forget how highly rated he was originally when they signed him. They paid a big old fee for him into Milan, actually. I think it was over 30 million euros originally. And I still think they would demand a big fee. There's no doubt about that. We're talking about, one of the 2 or 3 best centre-backs.
Money isn't really. I mean, Liverpool paid, upwards of £70 million on Van Dijk. Liverpool will need, there is, effectively
I
it's
agree with
unlimited
that.
budget here.
And look, he signed a new contract to 2028, so it's not going to be easy to convince him to go. But I just think the role he's played at Inter Milan, this slightly advanced, sort of dynamic left-sided centre-back that's able to pick up in those new spaces. Anybody that saw Neve on Saturday Social at the weekend, she did a brilliant job of explaining this new position that a lot of English football fans probably aren't used to seeing from a centre-back that Bastoni operates in. I think
Chris Wilder was doing it years ago.
Yeah, I think when you see...
we saw William Saliba do it a little bit at Marseille.
Yeah.
He was on loan there as well, and look at how well he translated
exactly.
back to them.
And I think the way, exactly what I was about to
Arsenal.
say, when you see that ability on the ball, when you translate it with also his defensive nous, which we've seen for Italy at, for instance, Euro 2020 and at times, he is just the perfect all-round central defender. Like, I just don't see a hole in his game. He's strong, fast, good on the ball, good age, and maybe obtainable, just because I sometimes think the Italian sides are more willing to sell because of sort of money-related issues.
Yeah, that's true. But I love Bastoni. I think he would be a great fit at Liverpool. Dougie, what are you thinking? Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Right. This
Give you up
one
for me.
is a player that I actually suggested that Liverpool sign on Saturday Social in about April, May time. And I do still think it rings true, especially with the way that his team are playing this season, is David Hancko of Feyenoord. Brought to Feyenoord by Arne Slot, had rebuilt his career over in the Czech Republic with Slavia Prague after not really breaking through at Fiorentina effectively. I think it was actually Sparta Prague, but not really breaking through at Fiorentina effectively. The one season he had there, they were choosing, or they mainly went with Milinkovic and German Petzela as well. But since being at Feyenoord, he has really elevated his game. He's now 26, left-footed centre-back.
Older than Bastoni, yeah.
Older than Bastoni, but significantly cheaper, and can play as a left-back as well, which we'll talk about potentially replacing Robertson in the future as well. That might come into it. And look, in terms of his passing, this is what you were really looking for. Top 1%, and we will take it, that it's in the Eredivisie, a little easier standard, but top 1% for passes attempted, passes completed, progressive passes, progressive carries, successful take-ons, even progressive passes received for centre-backs. That's because of the sort of areas that he can pick up. Like Bastoni, very comfortable in the final third, very comfortable driving into midfield. His long-range passing isn't as good as Van Dijk, but it's still pretty solid. And this year, I think he's winning over 80% of his tackles as well, higher than Van Dijk. So he knows Slot's system perfectly. I don't think it'll cost a whole lot of money because Feyenoord have actually had a quite disappointing start to the season. They're down in, I think, 6th, 7th sort of area. They haven't lost a game, but they've drawn 4 of 7. So they're way off the pace of PSV, who just continue to go from strength to strength. But David Hancko, I don't think he's going to cost a whole lot of money as well. And I know that the budget for this is infinite as well, but I think he's easier to sign than Bastoni.
Easy life, is it? Don't think Michael Edwards is here for an easy life, mate. Michael Edwards is here to win trophies.
I do like that shout as well, Hancko. My concern with Hancko is that, if he was that good a signing for Liverpool, why did they not go for him this summer and say,
Slot was assessing his squad.
He was, but I do wonder here.
They knew they were going to have another year of Van Dijk, at least.
Yeah.
So I feel like signing him this summer, then what does that mean for Canate's development? What does that mean for Kwanzaa as well? Like, next summer's probably the time to go for him.
Exactly. I think if Van Dijk is going to leave next summer, I think we need someone with a little bit more gravitas.
Agreed,
I'm
yeah,
afraid.
agreed.
Doesn't sound very Liverpool.
Agreed.
Doesn't sound very Liverpool. They like building superstars there.
Well, they
sign
do.
Van Dijk,
They
sign
do.
Alisson.
But
Is there
I
anything
think
I can do to change your mind?
not
I'll buy you lunch tomorrow.
Bastoni was also top of my list, to be honest. I just think someone at 25 who's got that much
somehow
experience.
guessed every single time what was his original pick.
Well, yeah.
And I think with Hancko, I think
Hancko's
Hancko's just a bit. I think he has been amazing at Feyenoord, and I think would obviously fit Slot's system at Liverpool brilliantly. But I just think Bastoni ticks so many boxes, and everything that Hancko excels in, Bastoni does so in a bigger league, in a tougher league. And yes, back 3, but I think he will translate fine to a back 4. He's the full package for me, Bastoni, right now. And so I'm going to go for him. It is 3-1 now, Dukes. So pressure is on with this next one.
I've got a big one.
And this is a difficult one because we've now got to answer we've now got to answer the age-old question of is anyone good enough to play centre forward for West Ham United who's not Michail Antonio? He turns 35 next March. 35, Michail Antonio.
What a career,
it feels like, he's been around for ages now, hasn't he? I remember his kind of breakout year for West Ham in 2015-16, so he would have been in his mid-20s even then, and his longevity has been pretty remarkable. Of course, West Ham did sign an effective Antonio replacement this summer, but it's Nicholas Füllkrug, who's 31 years old. He's already had injury issues so far this season. There are a number of options out there for West Ham, but classically, West Ham are not playing under a manager whose style is all that different from David Moyes so far with Julian Lopetegui, and so I am looking for someone potentially. I mean, I'm very open to suggestions, but I would potentially favour someone who has got a bit of a physical profile similar to Michail Antonio, someone who's able to hold up the ball, bring others into play, as well as get the goals himself.
I think along the same lines.
So, Dukes, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah.
Who have you gone for?
I've gone for a big name.
Okay.
I think it's a super sexy signing. Darwin Nunez.
Oh, wow.
To West Ham.
Okay.
I think it's a blockbuster move, and West Ham need a blockbuster forward at the right age. 25 years old, Darwin Nunez. And look, this year, it feels like he's fourth, or at least third choice in slots plans for that centre-forward role. It feels like Jota, then it's Gakpo, then by distant third, it feels like it's Darwin Nunez. I think he's played 63 minutes in the Champions League. I think he's played 163 in the league. I think he's only had one start. And yet his return last year showed that this was a player that was at least has the tools to become a very good Premier League striker. Whether he's ever going to be Liverpool quality in terms of consistency, that is another issue. And it does feel like last year, I think it was only Calvert-Lewin and Brennan Johnson underperformed their XG by more. But last year, 11 goals and 8 assists in the league. It kind of went under the radar. I think he scored over 15 in all competitions. And you look at his raw numbers, most shots per 90 in the league last year, most shots on target per 90 in the league last year. And there were still some amazing performances from him, some great moments. He is very inconsistent, and you'd probably want this to have gone in his game by now. He's, as I said, 25. Is it ever going to work out at Liverpool? I'm not so sure. And I think if a club offered over £50 million for Darwin Nunez this summer, given the fact they paid £64 million for him initially with a load of add-ons, which I doubt he's reached because he hasn't become a regular or won major trophies really with Liverpool, then I think Liverpool would be really tempted to accept £50 million for Darwin Nunez. And I think he's got the potential to kind of terrify most defences in the Premier League. And with a system where he's playing 90 minutes every week, where he's playing in a sort of counter-attacking system, linking up with Kudus and Somerville and Jared Bowen, and also has that physical presence to lead the line by himself as well. He's quite a terrifying player when you see him at full throttle. I think West Ham fans could really fall in love with him, and he could be the one to break the striker curse.
I did not see that one coming, Diggs.
No.
I didn't see that one coming. But
I'm full of surprises.
But I must admit, I like the novelty aspect of Darwin Nunez at West Ham. I think he is. I do think he's still a great striker waiting to happen. Joe, what have you got for me here?
Well, I'm still torn really between three options in my head here.
Doesn't sound good.
Look, I think Jonathan David is one of the outstanding candidates here, right? With the contractual situation, his goal scoring record, I do want to see him get given a chance in the Premier League, to be honest with you. But it's boring. So I don't want to say Jonathan David. My other two names, I'm going to start with the one I'm not going to pick. Okay. And that was Gabriel Jesus. Okay. Who I think would be an excellent option for West Ham, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how long he's got left in his Arsenal career. I feel like the team has slightly progressed past where Gabriel Jesus is as that sort of number 9, but there's no doubt about it. He is one of the best players in terms of back to goal, link up play, bringing other players in, dribbling in tight spaces. He is so strong that I think he would work really nicely with a player like Jared Bowen. Maybe with a Somerville, bringing those two players into the game, dropping a little bit deeper, almost as a false 9, linking play up. Yes, his goal-scoring record isn't amazing. His XG has never been super high, and he's been a pretty consistent underperformer of it. But his all-round game is absolutely exceptional. He's still just 27 years old, and I think if you could stop him going to like an Inter Milan or somewhere where he's going to end up and be really, really good, then you could get 5 really good seasons out of Gabriel Jesus. I still think there's a top player there. But I'm not going to pick him. I'm actually going to go for another man in North London. I'm going to go for Richarlison, who I think has been, mocked and laughed for a lot of his career, hasn't he? But has actually put up okay numbers. Even last season, 11 goals in 18 starts. Pretty impressive in a Tottenham side where he wasn't the main guy and has kind of been a bit malfunctioning with him in the side. The biggest benefit, I think, from West Ham is actually when you look at his Everton days. What he was able to do in that Everton side, when he was fit and firing in that Everton side, to be able to score goals, to be able to bring other players in the game, strong with his back to goal, really good in the air, able to run the channels as well, which is, when I look at Michail Antonio and what he's best at, parts of that game really mirror what Richarlison's best at with his work rate off the ball, his physical presence. He actually gets in great areas to score goals, and when he's been fit consistently, he's actually scored goals. Now, he has not scored goals to the level where Tottenham are going to be pushing for Champions League consistently, and he can be a bit clumsy in his finishing at times, but he's still, on paper, let's not forget this is Brazil's starting number 9. If everybody's fit, he starts up front for Brazil. I think West Ham could do a lot worse than sign Richarlison, who's still only just 27 years old, from Tottenham. I feel like Tottenham were open to selling him in the summer. I think next season they would probably still be open to selling him. Dominic Solanke is the number 9 there. They would probably be able to bring another number 9 in to support him.
Well, we're getting Bryan Mbeumo in, aren't we? So, I mean, that solves that issue.
Yeah, but I just think that Richarlison's a gettable asset and has a history of Premier League goal scoring that has slightly flown under the radar. I think he would be, decent price, Richarlison, and have an instant impact in that side.
Yeah, I think you talk a strong game with Richarlison. You do talk a strong game. I'm actually surprised neither of you went for Matheus Cunha. He feels like, for me, the most natural replacement here. 12 goals for Wolves last year, 7 assists. 25, amazing age, his underlying numbers in terms of progressive carries, just all round. I think he'd be a great fit at West Ham. But I think as much as I think Richarlison would be an asset to West Ham, I do just think Darwin Nunez. I think there's just more to unlock there in Darwin Nunez at West Ham.
Great choice.
I think a lot of what Richarlison does well, and in terms of running the channels, I think Darwin Nunez does that as well. I think his injury record recently is a lot better than Richarlison's too. And I agree, Dukes. I just think he's a scary player, and I think it does feel like next summer is the summer that Nunez leaves if he's not going to get significant game time under Arne Slot. Doesn't feel stylistically a fit there. Does feel a stylistic fit in a more counter-attacking side, I think. So yeah, Darwin Nunez takes it. 3-2. We're now going to go to Aston Villa. This is a difficult one, right? So we're replacing here John McGinn.
And before Villa fans get really angry, we know he's only 29. But
he's 30. He's 30 tomorrow. Hey. He's 30 tomorrow. So happy birthday, John McGinn, for Friday. So he's not. He's not young, but it does still feel like he's got a lot of years left in him. He's very much in his prime. The difficulty here is, and I'm going to leave a bit more of a blank slate here. He's obviously played a lot of minutes wide, hasn't he? Under Unai Emery, played on the left and right of a midfield 4 this year, but also had to fill in a lot when there was an injury crisis in defensive midfield. Had to play a lot deeper last year, so we're kind of looking for a midfielder who can do a little bit of everything, or at least can fulfill defensive duties and attacking duties. We're kind of looking for someone, an 8, a 6. I'm basically ready to be wooed here with your pitches, right? And what you think Villa need, because Villa's squad in the midfield is already pretty well equipped. So, yeah. Take it away. Who wants to go first?
Joe?
Okay.
You lost the last one?
Yeah. I mean, my original suggestion has gone. I thought Eberechi Eze would be a really nice fit for Aston Villa. We look at Aston Villa as maybe a slight level below the top 6, but they've proven that they can go out and sign players that the top 6 want. When they went and signed Moussa Diaby, I think it shocked everybody, didn't it, with the smoothness of that transaction, the high level of play, despite the fact he was never able to really do it at Villa and ended up leaving. When he first signed, everybody was like, oh my God, Villa has signed Moussa Diaby. And I think that could be the case for Eberechi Eze as well. I think he'd be a really nice fit. The issue is he too stylistically similar to Morgan Rogers? And, Morgan Rogers, this sort of ball-carrying 10. You've also got Jacob Ramsey in there who can do a little bit of that. So I actually thought a little bit more outside the box. And I am suggesting that they go and try and poach Harvey Elliot. who I think,
Wow.
I love Harvey Elliott. I absolutely think he's a fabulous player. And yes, he's not in the mould of John McGinn. I totally understand that. But what he is so good at is being able to play either on the right or kind of inverting inside a little bit as well. He's still super, super young. And if we're honest, is he going to get the minutes at Liverpool? Like, the chat has been for ages, he's going to get the minutes. We still haven't seen him get the minutes. I want to see him playing football. Mo Salah, we're saying, is staying. Like, we've not chosen to replace him here. While Mo Salah's at the club, the minutes aren't going to come for Harvey Elliott. I just don't see where he fits into this Arne Slot attack. Start of the season, he's been injured, hasn't he? He's had injury problems. And in pre-season, he looked really impressive. Arguably, he was Liverpool's best player on the pre-season tour. But do we honestly think we see him like starting 20 games this season for Liverpool? I'm not too sure. Maybe that'll happen. Liverpool fans are probably screaming at me in the comments below. But if it doesn't happen, is there an option to take him? And we are talking about one of the highest rated talents in England for his age group. He would be able to offer cover on the right-hand side. I know Leon Bailey looks really exciting out there, and Ealing Jr. is there too, but he can also offer cover in the attacking midfield role. He's a super, super fun player, and I would just like to see him working with Unai Emery. A little bit like he's done with Morgan Rogers, where he's taken his game to a whole new level. I really think he could do that for Harvey Elliott.
Interesting. My one concern would be, does Harvey Elliott, he faces almost as much competition at Villa as at Liverpool.
I don't think in the same way, though. I don't think in the same way. Because Mo Salah is the guy.
Not quite, but is Harvey Elliott willing to wait a couple of years at Liverpool and really get his chance as a regular starter, or does he jump ship now?
It's a rogue
to Villa?
suggestion. It's a rogue suggestion.
I mean, it's certainly a punchy target. I think he would be, obviously, he would be an absolute coup for Villa. Dougie, have you gone for someone perhaps a bit more realistic, or are you also looking to poach someone from a top six club?
I know you like realistic targets, so I just went realistic.
Well, it didn't work with Hancko.
It didn't work with Hancko. That is true. That is true. Yeah, I was on a similar line as Joe. I actually think they're quite, even though they don't have that many out-and-out defensive midfielders, it feels like with Barkley and Onana and Camara Tielemans, there's enough like defensive cover in there. So I kind of went for an attacking midfielder who can also play wide a bit, and settled on Malik Tillman, who plays for PSV. He's a 22-year-old US international, came through the academy at Bayern Munich. He's German-born, but now represents the US. And he got his chance at Rangers the year before last. He scored 10 goals and got 4 assists. They wanted to buy him permanently. He then went to PSV last year under Peter Bosch, got 9 goals and 10 assists in the league alone. And you know when a player just, and you often see it with the Eredivisie in particular, just feels like they've completely outgrown the league. It feels like he's really at that level now. You know, as an attacking midfielder, he's now at over 0.8 expected goals and assists per 90. McGinn's at just under 0.3. And he's chipping in defensively as well. You watch some of his highlights, and it's lung-busting runs to get back and forward. And he can beat a player in tight spaces. He kind of looks pretty complete and looks very similar stylistically to someone like Morgan Rogers, which is maybe a little bit of an issue, as physically developed as him as well. But I think it's, who would say no to 2 Morgan Rogers at the moment with the way he's playing at the moment? So, PSV will want him. They're cruising the Eredivisie once again. They'll want to, try and make strides going forward. But Dutch clubs do generally sell at reasonable prices as well. I think you could probably get Malik Tillman for under £40 million, £30 million probably or so. And I think he's on the right path. He'd see Villa as a nice stepping stone. Well, Villa fans are going to be furious with that, but for the next couple of years, being only 22, you're a Villa for 4 or 5 years, you do well there. Who knows where you end up? And he looks like he's on that sort of trajectory.
Interesting. Funnily enough, the name that really popped out to me when I was doing my initial background looking into this was another PSV player. It was Joey Veerman, who at 25 is a bit more developed, and in terms of output from midfield is pretty remarkable. 16 assists from central midfield last term, 5 assists already this year.
I think he plays a bit deeper than Tillman.
He does play more deep, and that's why I thought maybe as a McGinn replacement that would work quite well, because McGinn, classically can play pretty deep. Is capable of contributing in the final third too. This is a tough one. I think Tillman feels a bit more like the profile of player we're looking for, I'm afraid.
Square.
I think Harvey Elliott, I love the punchiness of it. And I know I gave Darwin Nunez going to West Ham a go in the last round, but I just think that Harvey Elliott's time at Liverpool will come. I just think it will come.
I hope it does.
And I think that means
3-3.
that it's 3-3 going into the final round. And where better to end than at Everton? I believe this might have happened a couple of months ago, potentially. We're going to Everton and we're replacing the eternal Seamus Coleman.
Yeah.
Just turned 36. Only 7 starts in the Premier League last season. I know what you'll be saying at home. They've already got Nathan Patterson there, but shaky injury record to say the least since he's arrived at Everton. And at the very least, Everton need cover at right back. So I'm not necessarily looking for a young upstart. We've got that with Patterson. We're going to be patient with him. Again, his time is going to come. But we need quality backup. We need someone who's going to come in and be that quality cover and potentially be Everton's starting right back as well. So I will come to who went first last time, Joe. So I'll come to you, Dougie. What you thinking?
This is
Remember the budget here.
Yeah, I'm remembering the budget.
I think that's crucial for this suggestion.
that is important. That is important. But budget didn't come into it when you picked Bastoni, did it?
So
well,
no, but
let's
put our
cards on the table. Let's put our cards on the table and see where we're at. I have been talking about this player for a couple of years now. It looks really, really promising. And actually, Monaco fans are going to be a little bit frustrated because we suggested Adi Hutter for Everton last week. And now I'm choosing their starting right back, which is Van Dijk, going to Everton as well. This guy is 23-year-old Brazilian. He's been playing at Monaco. I think this is his 4th year there now. Really, really good defender. Over 5 tackles and interceptions per 90. Gets off a shot per 90 as well. But just a really, really solid all-round defender. And there are rumours now that Liverpool are considering him and Jeremy Frimpong as a potential Trent replacement.
In what world? Are we talking about Van Dijk going to Everton?
Which doesn't make any sense because, I'll come back to that in a second, Joe, but Liverpool looking at Van Dijk and Jeremy Frimpong, they couldn't be more different as right-back replacements for Trent, to be totally honest. So they're spreading their net wide, if that is the case. Everton need to get in there ASAP if they want to get Van Dijk. Because
I'm suggesting Kimmich, mate. Yeah, Kimmich.
They're top of Liga at the moment, but at the moment, he isn't that widely talked about. And players, there are enough young players at Everton. You see the development there. If you want to go there and end up, look at the rise of Iliman and Jai this season, the quality that they signed in Jack Harrison and Dwight McNeil when they went there as well. Everton's not a terrible option. It's got this brand new stadium that's opening at the start of next year. It's not a terrible time to take that move. I think it is unlikely that he'd swap Monaco for Everton, but I don't think it's impossible. And they need to do it before he ends up at another Premier League club.
It's the bravest shout of the day, I think.
That is punchy. That is punchy for sure. Joe, what are you
I've
saying?
gone down a totally different route here.
Okay.
I've gone down a totally different route. I think Everton have got very little budget, maybe even no budget. So I've actually looked at players that are out of contract in the summer, have a bit of Premier League experience potentially as well. I'm presuming that Sean Dyche is going to still be in a job because I think he is the right guy for Everton. So somebody who is potentially English, Premier League experience on a free, 27 years old, a nice age as well in there. So, not past their best, just about to hit their peak powers. Consistent player, not had many injuries over the course of his career, averaging sort of 35 starts over the last 4 seasons, put up 43 in the Championship last campaign.
Oh, yeah.
I think Kyle Walker-Peters is an absolutely sensational option for Everton. He's out of contract with Southampton in the summer. He's still started 5 games this season, but he offers cover
in the summer as well.
In the back 4. He also offers cover as a wing back in a back 5 if they wanted to shift to a back 3 under a new manager. His attacking output isn't amazing, but his on-the-ball ability is seriously underrated, Kyle Walker-Peters. Obviously, his numbers are juiced a little bit because of how Russell Martin plays. They dominate the ball so frequently. His sort of pass numbers and his pass completion numbers are just juiced out their eyeballs. But his progressive pass numbers, his progressive carry numbers are excellent. He's a really good 1v1 defender too. He comes from pretty decent pedigree, having left that Tottenham side. I think there's very little downside to signing a player like Kyle Walker-Peters on a free transfer when he's 27 years old with an injury record like his. If he was to come in and be the Seamus Coleman replacement, be the Ashley Young replacement, I don't think it's an impossible task to imagine him going on and being a really solid club servant for sort of 5-6 years, even if you then sign somebody who comes in and be a superstar right back in the next 2 years when they are looking to push up into those European spaces. He can also offer cover at left back, not talked about enough. We've seen Ashley Young operate there at times for Everton this season. Can't continue that really, can it? So you've got a player who's multifunctional, that's in the prime of his career, and is free, which is crucial to how Everton have to operate because the FFP, the PSR calculations are still pretty ugly.
So he's out of contract at the end of the season.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like your thinking there. I do like your thinking. I think Van der Son, also really exciting. I think, like I was saying,
Van der Son's refusing to get on the coach, mate. Everton
do need to. Everton will have higher ambitions in the next few years, and I think Van der Son is the kind of player I see Everton eventually trying to target. But like you say, Dukes, the kind of players that Everton have been targeting and have been getting some pretty good stuff out of in recent years, especially in the case of Dwight McNeil, but players in that mould, Dwight McNeil, Jack Harrison, players with Premier League experience who are perhaps at a bit of a loose end, need a club that isn't necessarily, well, Everton, of course, have fought relegation, but a club with higher ambitions than that, getting out of the likes of Burnley and Leeds. That's where Kyle Walker wins it for me. I think he is the kind of profile that Everton should be going for in that sense. I think it's the right. Sorry, what did I say?
Kyle Walker.
Kyle Walker. Oh, right, yeah.
Get him in.
Kyle Walker Peters, of course, but Kyle Walker. I mean, not a bad shout either. Actually, if we're thinking about it, as cover, short-term covered. I was also looking at. Trippier wouldn't have been a bad shout. I think I was also considering James Justin out of Leicester. I think he would have been a good pickup. One of your old favourites as well, Dougie, Stefan Posch out of Bologna, I think would have been a good player to be looking at. But I do think Kyle Walker-Peters also does win it on his ability to cover at left-back. I think he's done that superbly over the years. And that is an area where Everton really have been, have needed cover with Mikalenko in and out. With injury as well. So, I think Kyle Walker-Peters really, really solid. So, I'm afraid Dougie...
Joe takes it.
Joe just about takes it.
On the final one. Wow. What a contest. Guys, let us know, who are your suggestions to replace those legends in a few years? Don't get too angry in the comments. We're talking over the long term as well, but I do think there were some excellent suggestions in there. Big thanks to Mikey. Big thanks to Joe. And we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.